has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up. But you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start me own nation with myself for preservation. I'm gonna start me own nation with myself for preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And today is a really special edition of Political Unmuted because today is our 50th edition, our half centenary edition, and it marks the end of a full year. Next week is the anniversary of our starting. So we've been going a year, and we just had a fortnight off, I was told by Paul a couple of weeks ago. So welcome to a very special edition of this, and sort of we're going to be 50% more clever today. The team in front of me are going to give you 50% extra value with their comments. Trust me. Today we've got the fabulous four back again with us, and how brilliant they've been. So many people sort of. Paul, you've not missed one, have you, of those 50?
No, I've got a little. I can hear myself twice. It's a bit weird, but never mind. I'll sort that out in a second. Yeah, I've had to do the tech. So
Yeah. Just unbelievable. Sam, you're almost 100%.
Yes, I think I had I've had maybe one or two off.
Yeah. And Stuart, have you missed any?
Yeah, I've had a few, I think.
And Laura, you've been unbelievable because you have been this bottom right-hand corner because you've been really poorly on one or two occasions, but you've got somebody in, and the result has been this kind of stellar lineup in the bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah, got to be careful. They could all replace me very easily.
Oh, nobody can replace you, Laura. So this is the team today, everybody, and here we are, and what a privilege to be able to sit here in the centre at the top and to let these people share their brilliant ideas with you. Fabby. I'm not even reading the comments. I'm just looking in admiration at the team in the screen in front of me. So let's go straight to... Stuart, moment of the week.
Start with me, are we?
Yeah, why not?
My moment of the week, Unite Community, as part of the ongoing Universal Discredit campaign, came up to Red Hills and did a bit of filming. We tried to support the campaign on camera, so there was myself, Samantha and Paul, and we all tried to give a good show, but only one of us did it in one take. Just guess who. So a great time. First, I think that was my first proper political outside thing in a long time.
And the DMI, so absolutely vital. Let's go, Samantha. Moment of the week.
My moment of the week is discovering that I may be being moved into Sedgefield constituency. I will not be moving, but the constituency boundaries will be moving around me, it seems. A new constituency called Bishop Auckland and Newton Aycliffe and Sedgefield, or Sedgefield and Newton Aycliffe, is going to be created, which brings in Shildon and I think Coxer at the top end.
Looks like
It's great for us, that, in terms of winning back Sedgefield, but it's not very good for Bishop Auckland in terms of it ever being Labour ever again. So it's really tricky. But also, there's no reason to do that. Like, it doesn't, neither of these constituencies are particularly large or particularly small. Like, the whole point of the reshuffle is supposed to even out constituency numbers, and they may as well just leave us alone, because we're all hovering around the 60 to 80,000 mark, which is what they say they wanted. So to be honest, I love yous, I do, but I would rather stay in Bishop Auckland constituency. I'd rather they left us alone. But it does mean that my MP is going to have the heartbreaking situation where she's going to have to vote on whether she wants to keep me or not. I'm sure that's going to go through her head. Mm-hmm.
I think that the lure of a lifetime seat until she cares to give it up might well influence that more than losing me.
Yes.
I mean, just on that, I get the impression that we're being changed just so they can shuffle things around to sort of allow the changes and the reductions that they're trying to do. You know, they start in the top right-hand corner, and then they arrange them all in about 60,000s all the way down, and it's not particular. There doesn't seem to be any particular sense in any of these realignments of community, of putting communities together that actually go with each other. It's more just a case of let's jiggle the numbers until we get a group of that fit in with all the other groups and constituencies and come to about 60,000. Oh, thank you. Right. Laura, moment of the week.
Yeah, sorry, mine is not going to be a happy one, I'm afraid. My moment of the week this week was just devastatingly the picture of Arten Iran Najad, who washed up a 15-month-old baby on the shores in Norway after trying to cross the channel to get to England, to get to safety. I guess the lack of outcry, the lack of uproar is speaks volumes about where we're at in terms of people needing help, people not from this country needing help. It's another stark reminder of what happens when people are desperate and don't have anywhere to go. You know, we really need to sort this situation out. It's another Alan Kurdi, and we've seen we talk about him on this show quite a few times, and it's another one. And these are just two that we know of. You know, Artan died with all of his family, 2 siblings and his mum and dad. So rest in peace to that beautiful family and everybody else who loses their lives in the channel. And just people need to recognise how important this is and how awful it is and how devastating and how needless as well. So yeah, that was my moment of the week. Another gut punch to the stomach. Lovely.
Was this just prevailing currents and weather conditions? Because it seems an awful long way from the channel, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was last week their boat went down, so he's only just washed up. I think it was like yesterday or a couple of days ago, but it'd been quite a lot of time before the family haven't turned up. It was initially they found had like a blue all-in-one jacket that they get to keep them warm. They found that first, and then they found him. So I don't know.
Just tragic. And you're going to be talking about the wider issues of this later on in the show anyway.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And finally, Paul, moment of the week.
I'm gonna go all for members in this one, Socialist Think Tank members, because it is our 50th show. It has been brilliant having all people watching us and stuff. So I'm going to encourage our members to hit 300 subscribers today on YouTube, which would be nice. Just a few more to go for that one. We want to get our subscribers up on YouTube. But the reason I want to bring up members is it's so nice having people who are sort of part of our community doing things together. So it was really nice to do that with Stuart and Samantha, who was for the benefit of our podcast listeners. Samantha was the one take person, not me. So yeah, it was Samantha then. So she did great then. And then we went up to the monument for a demonstration organised by Northeast against racism, following a year after the Black Lives Matter demonstrations. And a few of us who were members of Socialist Think Tank spoke there. I was really, really honoured to speak on behalf of Socialist Think Tank from the monument, so it's a bit of a bucket list thing. Samantha nearly had to take over for me because I was really hanging because it had been my surprise 40th birthday party the night before. So I was really in a bad way, but the adrenaline actually burned off the remnants of feeling bad, and I ended up feeling okay afterwards. But that was an absolute honour. But as far as Socialist Think Tank members, I wasn't even in I was probably the third best out of our members. Although probably even not. I think we've got more members than that. I was well down the list of where our members came in with regards to how good my speech was, because Laura spoke, another member spoke that we're not going to mention the name of, but who was absolutely incredible and had everyone moved to tears. So I'm really, really proud of what we're doing. I'm really proud of the movement we're putting together, and I'm really pleased that we've done 50 of these shows and we've spent a year doing this thing. It's it's great.
Congratulations to you, well done. And I saw the thing of all the speeches and in cost on Facebook as well. Congratulations to you all, unbelievable. Right, okay, well, I don't see no reason. Laura, that was a really moving moment of the week, and it's really people sharing these little moments, and then you get something as devastating as that. We never do it justice. Anyway, moving on.
Now it's time for the big story.
By the way, Paul, I noticed your fan club's coming up on the line. You spoke really well, Paul. Oh no, Paul, you were so good, Paul. Don't you worry.
You always add a little intonation that isn't there.
Paul Daly. Okay, here we go. Stuart, Social Carers Week, I think, today, this week, but an article in The Guardian saying that social care is a cruel vacuum. Agree?
I do agree, yeah. We all kind of understand how important social care is, but a lot of what we're showing about how we're going about it in this country is regarding how we care for our older people. And there is just a big black hole about how we address it with adults and children. And what we've got at the moment that we're not addressing is a system that's primarily, causes issues for people with disabilities. The people who are probably some of our most vulnerable in society are just almost left out of the equation, out of the policy making. And several reports have come back saying that, we're just not doing what's needed to tackle the problem in Britain.
I mean, I do know that the CLP's disability officer has been tirading month after month after month about the inadequacies of the law in regard to disability rights. But it took me by surprise that our social care of disability is so appalling too.
Yeah, it's a terrible, how should I say, system going on, and it's really worrying when you look at the media and the kind of stuff that's coming out of the government, it's all about that we've got an aging population, and we're all going to have to start paying more. And it's actually part of the issue going on is with austerity and people becoming poorer, and that link to illness and disability is a spiral down into something that we eventually won't be able to fix. We need to get on the horse now if we want to tame the situation.
Thank you. Sam, is this simply a government failing? I mean, the government has been twittering on about this for years and nothing has happened. Is this simply the government's fault?
It is one of those things that, Labour supporters, with being straight down the line and straight honest, need to accept that sort of the Labour government didn't tackle when it was their time either. None of successive governments have been able to get a handle on the social care issue, and very much things are just left to families to deal with. And people, the government assumes that there are families available to take on this strain. And as Tim says in the comments, it's Carers Week this week. I'm a carer. I'm one of those carers that has had a miraculous thing happened in my family, because now I earn more than £128 a week. My children suddenly don't need any care, and I get absolutely no support from the government for all of the hours that I put in to help them. And bearing in mind, just to give people a little bit of context, I'm dealing with kids with continence issues. I'm dealing with kids with communication issues that are delayed by 4 years. I've got one little boy who needs to be in physical contact with me at all times. I do, you can't think about everything you do, because it'll overwhelm you and it'll get you down. But I'm one of the lucky ones. I don't have to deal with physically getting like what you call them? Hoists. Yeah, hoisting grown adults in and out of baths and into beds and turning people who have bed sores and things. I don't have that to deal with. But the burden that is just being left to the most vulnerable people in society to deal with is just absolutely unacceptable. And if you talk to parents of disabled kids, you will hear some absolute horror stories. You'll hear, I know someone who had a child who was violent to her other children, and she asked for help for years and no help was provided. And because she couldn't keep her other children safe from her older child, she got her kids took off her by social services and put into foster care. People are desperate for help. They ask for help all the time and nothing happens.
Thank you very much. Of the three areas that Stuart mentioned, children's social care, old people's social care, disability social care, which do you think is the most urgent problem?
Oh, it's not fair to pick one, is it? This is and we can't let the government split us off against each other and say, oh, my social care need is more important than your social care need. But the fact is, the top and bottom of it is, the basics is just employing people with enough basic training that they can care for another human being, and it's not that hard. It's not rocket science to employ people who actually do care and give them the tools they need to care for people. But unfortunately, if you go to the job centre website and you sort by lowest wage, you will have to scroll through about 6 pages of carers jobs before you find somebody at some other jobs. They are the absolute lowest paid, to the point where you know, if you're a carer, you've got to watch out that you're not paying for your uniform and your mileage and your own DBS out of your own wage and actually earning less than minimum wage.
Yeah, Laura, I was going to ask sort of how much is it sort of, but Samantha's sort of addressed the issue. How much is it a problem on the ground of the people who are employed and the pressures that they're under, which is basically a direct kick on from what the government is not doing. I mean, so is it just a matter of more money?
No, not at all. And I think the term employed really needs to be used with an absolute pinch of salt, because these people, I think there's an expectation that people will do it out of the goodness of their heart. And the people who do choose to go into care work, you know, they don't get paid for the travel times between jobs. It's just, it's not even minimum wage. It's not living wage. And it probably comes out as less than anywhere even approaching minimum wage. The whole system's absolutely pathetic. And as I say, there's probably more people who need care that don't have a carer that is employed by anybody, because as I say, there is this expectation that families will do it. Wives, mothers, daughters essentially will always just pick up the can, but it's grueling work. Like, let's be clear about this, it's bloody hard. And if you're looking after a family member, not only is it physically difficult, but it's mentally difficult as well. It must be absolutely devastating to try your best at doing that. We need a more robust system. We need a government that sees the importance in people who need to be taken care of, and that we should look after people who are vulnerable. And it's not just old people, it's young people, it's disabled people, it's people with all kinds of issues, not just physical ones. Our government shows time and time again that they have a complete lack of concern when it comes to people who do not earn them any money. And I think that's the crux of it here. Just a bit more empathy, please.
I mean, I think empathy is the key thing. I'm going to come back to Samantha, because Tim Dredge mentions DCC. And he points out that budgets have been massively cut. How much do you think of the poor terms offered to carers in terms of their wages is due to councils grinding down the amounts that they're paying to the agencies and to the companies providing care, simply because their budgets have been cut? How much are the councils to blame in this? Because when I was a councillor, I got an awful lot of complaints from care providers about the fact that the terms that they were having to accept per person from DCC were so poor that it was virtually impossible to keep going as a company on those terms. Is it a county council problem?
I think, I mean, there are always decisions that can be made and have to be made. And, you know, at the end of the day, you've got to work out how to allocate this money that is not enough to cover the services they need to provide. That's the top and bottom of it. At the end of the day, as we said before, you know, the council's doing what it can in terms of responsibly raising council tax, but the rest of the money that the council gets comes from central government. And also central government make the law about what is acceptable in care settings. So if the government really wanted to raise the wage for carers or raise the minimum standards for care, introduce a minimum carer stop off, say, because some carers only get to spend like 5 minutes, 10 minutes with somebody they need to care for. It's totally within the government's power to say, okay, we're going to set a legal minimum amount a carer needs to spend with a client, which is 30 minutes. But they're not doing it. It's easy to set the councils up as the bad guys because they're the front line. But I think you need to look about the whole context of caring and the whole context of the legal background. Bearing in mind, my carer's allowance for looking after 2 disabled children worked out to be £1 an hour.
Stuart, a new deal for carers?
Yeah, that's what we need. We need a new deal for care. For the people who need care and for the people working in the sector. This is, an economic goldmine when you think about it, how beneficial it could be to start investing in people that take on socially valuable work that's going to benefit the people who really need it in a time when jobs are becoming increasingly automated. This is the time to invest in people caring. We need a new deal for care.
The manifesto writes itself, Stuart.
The reason everybody is that Stuart said before we started, he said, well, he says I can lead off on this one, but I haven't got anything particularly sort of crucial to say. And then halfway through the discussion, he suddenly comes up with a new deal for care. Sort of, if you're listening, MPs, there's something to take up and run with. Paul, is the answer technology, artificial intelligence?
Well, we're doing a little bit of something technologically different as we speak, John. We've got some new graphics on there, so we'll have to get some feedback on whether that's a good thing. It's just our Twitter handles. But anyway, I don't think AI is going to solve this. There is talk of getting AI to solve our social need, but what we are missing in social care is actually the care and the community. I think what's happened is not care in the community, but care for your community. I think what we've seen over the last, since neoliberalism, and again, I'm going to go on one of my big rants here probably about neoliberalism, but we've seen people detached from one another, and we've seen individualism being the most important thing. And part of that individualism, and it's been referenced in the comments about the privatization of everything. So, people assume that, capitalism is going to solve all the problems because, if you sell to the highest bidder and whatever, and then they provide the best service or whatever. And it's absolute nonsense. What we've moved away from is we're working people far too hard, and we're telling people that they must go and have this amazing career and work all these hours, and that means that people can't spend time with their families and they can't support one another in certain areas, and that makes things much, much, much more difficult. It puts a lot more pressure on services. And then at the other end, you've got people who are selling services and trying to provide it as cheap as possible, given below minimum wage jobs a lot of the time, not even minimum wage, because they use they use agencies that will try and undercut that and cut people below minimum wage in social care, in something that's an incredibly important thing to do. There's nothing more important than looking after one another, and yet these people are given very little to do that. And it's almost like it's one of the least important jobs in society, even though we know very well that it's a hugely important job. So I think we need to have a complete rethink of how we look at this. It's a priority thing. I think we should be prioritizing care for people. I'm going to just finish up on one last thing, which is an example of special education, which, I'm involved in. In special education, at the moment, the people in my school, they're allocated around £19,000 a year to pay for their education. That pays for the teachers' salaries and so on, and the number of students you have in, pays for your books, pays for everything. Okay. If they don't get on with our school, the next place for them is going to be £90,000 a year, £100,000 a year, for private provision. Okay. There's nothing in state education for them, but the state will pay £100,000 a year for their provision. Now that's a big amount of money. That's 5 students for us. That kind of money, if you're going to spend that much money on a pupil, then you find out that in other schools, people are being sent there from academies because they are what is called low quality students. So low quality students would mean people who aren't going to get good results. They're getting excluded from academies. They don't have any special educational needs, so they can't go to a special school. They go to a PRU, which is overcrowded, and then they end up in this private provision at £100,000 a year, which is really designed for people who are absolutely not fitting in with the education system at all, even in special schools. And they don't subsequently get very much out of that educational experience. That is where we are as a nation at the moment, and I think we need to understand that. That is what academisation is doing. And if that's what it's doing in education, which is part of social care, of course, like if you lump it all together, a lot of these people, we're talking about special education, if that's what's happening, then what else is happening in social care? What money is being taken out of the system to give to the private sector? And that's what worries me.
I mean, Stephen Patterson, and I'm just going to finish this off with sort of taking a couple of comments from Stephen Patterson's comments, Samantha, is something that you might want to pick up, where he's talking about the fact that the CQC is in the paperwork, not in the actual provision. And time, he says it's time, that's the issue. And then going on to Anthony Riley, sometimes I think that there's more to caring than wiping noses and bottoms and giving the odd bath. And
But again, it's like Ofsted, isn't it? Who decides what the CQC is looking for? Who decides what Ofsted is looking for? Well, ultimately, those are political decisions by the national government.
So often we deal with measurable things, and what Anthony's saying there is that listening and caring sort of are not actually numerous things. Smashing comments, everybody. Thank you so very much. Smashing comments, team, as always. Right to the nub of the question. But I'm going to move on now to.
The story like the back of my hand, 'cause I've heard it all before.
And the first question, this is brilliant. Samantha, Buckingham Palace, actually this is an old story, it keeps cropping up again and again and again. Buckingham Palace banned ethnic minorities from office roles. Comment, please.
It's just embarrassing, isn't it? I mean, and again, right, for anybody watching this who doesn't get this yet, when somebody points out that you're doing something which is racist, the answer isn't, no, I'm not. And that seems to be the answer they've given, is, well, we've got our own ways of ensuring that we're not being racist. Well, everybody else has the law. You should not be above the law. The argument is that the palace shouldn't be able to be criticised on equality stuff because it would just give people an in to criticising. Give people a way in to criticising the Queen. And, you know, if you're an employer, I don't care if you're the Queen, right? If you employ people, you should have to follow employment law. Vonnie says it's not embarrassing, it's just racist. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Let's face it. I mean, it does sort of say later on, well, we have had sort of ethnic minorities, you know, recently. It's not good enough. You know, you've got a certain amount of leeway in saying society has changed, we have changed, we're going to do better now. But the answer is not that they're going to do better now. The answer is we've got a good reason for being exempt from equality legislation because I'm the Queen. No, doesn't work like that. Sorry, not acceptable.
I mean, it is necessary, isn't it, to point out that these are stories from before 1990. These are old papers that have been discovered and but nevertheless, they did reveal that the Queen wouldn't allow people from ethnic minorities to hold any senior or clerical positions. They didn't mind them being servants. And there you go. Laura, I mean, let's be topical. Do you think that, I mean, I'm drawing attention now to the fact that, what's the name of Harry's wife? Meghan Markle said that she became close to suicide about the racism that she faced in Buckingham Palace. I mean, but William issued a thing saying that the royal family was not racist, very not racist was his comments. I mean, do you think that the royal family shed its racism?
No, but also, I mean, God, even if the royal family wasn't racist, you have a person of colour saying she felt so victimised. You know, she's felt so bullied that she was considering killing herself because of the colour of her skin. And it's like, okay, maybe we should listen to the person suffering and not the people going, well, you're wrong. I'm sorry you feel hard done too, but we didn't do anything. No, we have to listen to the victims. We have to do better. This is not okay. And this whole thing, it wasn't just about them having not had any I'm not even going to use the words, the language they used, because it's just really inappropriate, but any people of colour, or however you want to describe them, certainly not in the way it's written in the papers, don't describe it like that. In the 60s that wasn't acceptable, but in the 90s they did, one or two, but actually they have a constitute in their whole guidelines and rules that anybody who does work for them is then not allowed to take their employer, the Queen, to court for any reason. So even if they were racist, they're not allowed to talk about it if they work for them. And also there's a thing called the Queen's consent, where she can, it's like a really archaic thing where she can tell the government, yes, you can talk about that. No, you can't talk about that. And they were talking about preventing sexism and racism in the workplace. And apparently, allegedly, she would let them talk about that in Parliament as long as she was exempt from it. So there you go. What more do you need? And that's the same Queen. She hasn't changed.
I mean, so thank you, Laura. Yeah, I mean, that for me is the biggest scandal. That the Queen is proven to have openly meddled in the making of laws to exempt herself from the laws which Parliament were making for the rest of us. And she just got in there before they started being made and sort of said, you know, you can only talk about this as long as you do this, and it. I mean, I found that is a real shocking. I mean, Paul, is this a constitutional crisis? I mean, does it constitute a constitutional crisis that a constitutional monarch is actually manipulating the laws for their own advantage?
It's only a constitutional crisis if we make it one, you know, and it depends what you want to do and whether. So I've seen some really, really wildly different opinions on the royal family over the past few years. I think people see the Queen do things and they really have a fondness for the Queen. And if the Queen does something, they'll kind of go, well, you know, she's done all these great stuff. She's really nice. And they make it about personalities rather than the institution. And I hate it when people make it about like a person rather than an institution. The institution has an issue there. Regardless, the Queen could be the nicest human being in the world, and the person who succeeds her could be the worst person in the world, and that is the problem, isn't it? Because, you know, like if you've got too much power in that position, and the Queen appears to have used this for, you know, and a lot of people would disagree with what she's used it for. But let's say someone got their hands on that kind of power and their name was Prince Andrew, for example, who is not so popular member of the royal family, given his status as someone who is allegedly a paedophile, and rehabilitated lately as well. if someone would, we have a more visceral reaction to that, and I think that's the key thing here. People need to detach personalities from this and think about whether you want someone who is a constitutional monarch having the kind of power to exempt themselves from certain laws. Is that the institution we want to run?
Thank you. Stuart, do you agree with Paul, or is this basically just a mountain after a molehill?
No, I agree with Paul, but I think, you know, if the establishment, you know, the institution that is the crown, you know, wanted to be what everybody thinks it is, that it's this great example for Britain. If they were to come out and say, look, we're tackling racism and we're going to start right here at Buckingham Palace, then, you know, that would be something to be applauded. But clearly that's not going to happen anytime soon, is it?
No. Sam, for discussion afterwards, Vonnie Hardman wants us to come out onto the streets. Sort of a genuine question: is this an issue which is worth coming out onto the streets when there's so many other things to come out onto the streets about? Laura, Napier barracks.
Yeah, sorry, I just need to say something really, really quickly.
Yes, say it as long as you want.
I've only just managed to switch my comments on, and my mum has just said, "Get rid of the monarchy." We need to all stop for a moment and realise how big of a deal it is. Thanks, Mum.
I noticed Lily say we need to. I mean, everybody knows I'm a Republican and have been for a long time. And I thought, am I going to say that Lilith wants to abolish the monarchy? And then I thought, no, step back. But if your mum's saying it, well, that's a big deal. Talk to us about Napier Barracks. What's going on here?
Okay. So Napier Barracks is in Kent, and it is a place that has been used to accommodate asylum seekers. Unfortunately, it hasn't gone very well, and six of the I think there's 280 people housed there. 6 of them have taken them to court and have won their court case. Basically, that the accommodation just failed standards for people to live there. The Home Office, Priti Patel, had said it was fine, ignoring warnings from Public Health England even before they started using the site, that it was not appropriate and it was certainly not COVID safe. But they went ahead anyway. And it's just, it's just another example, isn't it, of the lack of care shown to asylum seekers here. Since the case has been lost, Priti Patel has said, we have done a lessons learned exercise. Well, I'm convinced. I don't know about you. I feel a lot safer. It's ridiculous. A lessons learned exercise, no detail. She said they've fixed things, no detail, nothing. It's absolutely pathetic. And she's also tried to deflect the issue by coming out and blaming social media. And she's trying to stop social media posts that glamorize migrant crossings. I don't know about you, but I have not seen one glamorization of a migrant crossing. I just simply haven't. It's absolutely horrendous what she's playing at there. We need to be having conversations with her about getting safe routes over here. No one's illegal. It's not illegal to seek asylum here. But there isn't a safe route. We need a safe route, and then we can talk to these people, house them properly and help. We need things like humanitarian visas to help the people who come over, resettlement programs. They're the things we should be talking about, not detention centres effectively. We've got the Hassockfield campaign going on at the minute, which looks to house hundreds of women in prison-style camps. This is not the way you treat human beings, and it's certainly not the way you treat human beings who are vulnerable and need additional help and support. It doesn't matter where they come from. And I find it absolutely abhorrent and sickening that our country is letting this happen. Of course you don't hear about it really, dear, because, why would the BBC or the big media conglomerates tackle this government that gives them so much money and so much power? And vice versa, but the people should be out rioting. It's no way. If some of the 6 people who took took the Home Office to court on this were trafficked and were really vulnerable people and needed help, and instead got shoved in a room that was tantamount to prison and left in a place where COVID was running riot, and the Home Office job is to look after these people, and we are doing the exact opposite. And it's infuriating. So, yes.
Thank you very much. Brilliant, Laura. Thank God bless you. Sort of, we'll see if you've left anything for anybody else to say.
Sorry.
Paul, I mean, is there an element in which the government is just trying to have this place as a deterrent to anybody wanting to come across here?
I think they're certainly trying to deter people, but this has gone on for a while. Remember when they put adverts in, I think it was the Romanian press, to say, oh, don't come over here to Britain, it's crap, you wouldn't like it. And the Romanian press, I think it was Romanian, someone will probably correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, and the Romanian government came out and said, yeah, you're right, it's great over here, and if Britons want to come over here, you're perfectly welcome. It was quite an interesting little thing, but I think that was under David Cameron's government, but I could be wrong. So what's happening here, and I think people are alluding to it in the comments. These people are human, and Anne's saying the people who used to live in those barracks were soldiers, and they're human too. And that's not, I don't think we're trying to say that they should live in those conditions, like if these conditions are unsafe, and it was particularly unsafe under COVID as well with the sheer amount of people, we should be treating people like humans, and people are being increasingly dehumanized, and I didn't really think it could get worse than what it was, when we had the Breaking Point poster and all these people who were apparently brown lining up at the borders of Europe, and this is why we need to do Brexit and those kind of things, that kind of rhetoric. But it's not going away. You've got like the likes of Nigel Farage still bleating on. You've got Lawrence Fox, you've got Tommy Robinson, and by the way, watch the Ian Duncan Smith's video on them, because they've done 3 Lions with those people, and I was creased. It's well worth a watch. But anyway, we've still got this constant rhetoric that we're somehow under attack from people who are glamorously coming in their beautiful dinghies or something, and that's what, like, as if it's some sort of yacht. It's not a glamorous thing to do, to flee for your life. And, I'm proud of any country. I would be proud to be part of any country where people would come to have safety. And we should be able to offer those people safety, and they will offer us a lot back, because they are humans who will become part of our society, hopefully, or go back when it's safe. And this is what we need to do. We need to take this away from this, like all these, like the way they treated them, like in the dehumanized way. Priti Patel's been particularly bad for that as well, with our little Home Office, like Home Secretary jacket as well. So,
absolutely. So Sam, I'm going to bring you in at this point. I was going to leave you to the last, but I'm going to bring you out at this point, because can you talk a little about the fact whether, as I understand it, the Napier barracks were decommissioned for use by soldiers. They were seen to be not fit for soldiers to live in, and then sort of, we decided it'd be okay to put immigrants in there on detention. But you've been involved. Sort of people are discussing it. What's the issue? Can you talk to us about that for a while?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just dropped the link in the comments from the article from the Independent, saying that the barracks, there we go, had actually been described as obsolete. They'd been sort of written off as housing for people in the armed forces. This is one of the things. See, this is the thing that the Tories do: is they say things that they know aren't true, but they know that their lie will get around the world before the truth can get its shoes on, right? So Priti Patel said, it's a disgrace to say these weren't suitable for migrants, whatever they are, asylum seekers, just people. when they did house our brave armed forces, well, they had, I couldn't, even back in 2013, they were saying that the barracks were in poor condition and said that they needed huge amounts of investment to make them better. I haven't managed to read in the article how long they've been empty for, but they were stood empty because they'd accepted that they weren't good enough. While we are talking about empty buildings that aren't good enough, you know, we need to just briefly touch on Hassockfield here, you know. When you're talking about, so Hassockfield, formerly known as Medhamsley Detention Centre, it is a ghoul of an old building, which is literally haunted by the young men who were abused in there when it was used in that way. And now they're going to house women. It's a women's immigration removal centre is what they're calling it, isn't it? You know, and if you've done any work or any research into what brings women here, it's often not their choice. You get women brought to this country. They don't have any of their own passport. The passports are took off them. They don't know where they are, and they're used for sex work and forced into human slavery. So it's just, to me, it's so disgraceful to hear people making these people out to be the bad guys all the time, and the discourse around around Hasselfield and around the other place.
Napier.
It's all like these are bad guys and we need to lock them up, and, you know, and if it's good enough for prisoners, it's good enough for them, but they're not prisoners.
Thank you. Yes. The reason I'm cutting people off, I'm so sorry, everybody. These are good comments, but we've run out of time on this topic. Last word briefly, Stuart, on this. Have you got any words of wisdom for us on the topic?
We can do better. You know, we can do better for asylum seekers. We can do better for our soldiers, and we can do better for every person who needs a house in this country.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to cut that off there, not because there's nothing more to say, but because we need to move on to the last topic, which is the fact that Netanyahu has gone. Sort of whoopee-doo. Paul, try to leave everybody else a little time at the end to speak. But the floor is yours, Paul. Tell us what's going on, then explain everything to people, and then tell us what you feel about it.
Never underestimate Netanyahu. He has been gone before in everyone's eyes. He's not gone yet. But this is a very strange coalition. And we've seen a few strange coalitions around locally, but this is possibly a lot more strange than we're even seeing here. We've got a coalition of people. We've got someone who used to be in Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet. He was the Secretary of Defense. He was his chief of staff. His name is Bennett, and he is considered to be far right. He's a nationalist. He doesn't want a two-state solution to Palestine, Israel. He wants to settle all of the places that are Palestinian. So he's at the opposite end of what you would expect someone who was campaigning for Palestinian rights to be. And then you've got a centrist called Yair Lapid, who has brought these people together. He's a former TV presenter, and he is the centrist person who's brokered this coalition. Now, Bennett is going to be prime minister under this coalition of lots of different parties, because they have a form of proportional representation and they have lots of different parties represented there, and usually they have coalitions, and Benjamin Netanyahu has managed to stay there for 12 years. But then we've got this other one, and the strangest thing here is Abbas, who is a member of like sort of a left-wing Arab party. He's an Arab Israeli, and you would think these would be the furthest people from each other. You've got Bennett, and you've got Abbas, who really shouldn't be in coalition with one another, but there seems to have built up an anti-Netanyahu coalition, and they've decided that they're going to come together. Bennett, the far right one, will be Prime Minister for 2 years, and then Lapid will become Prime Minister for 2 years after that. But this is politically very, very unstable, and I don't think it signals much hope for Palestinians, although a lot of people in Palestine are saying like the world reaction to the awful atrocities that Israel's government have subjected them to may have been the thing that's put paid to Netanyahu eventually, but he's also facing a lot of corruption charges and what have you. Now, one of the things is as well, Netanyahu's been going around basically being very hostile towards everyone who's been against them. He's saying it's a constitutional crisis. He's saying it's the biggest political fraud in history. And some people are reminding them, it sounds very much like what led to the assassination of Israel's prime minister in 1995. The rhetoric around it is that, and a lot of people are worried that we will see another assassination attempt or a successful one on a prime minister or on a political figure of Israel, given the hatred that Netanyahu's trying to whip up. Now, the reason for that assassination was certainly being a lot more pro-Palestinian than a lot of other prime ministers have been. And it just goes to show how far right Israel have gone, where this, like putting in a far right person instead of Netanyahu, is seen as some sort of vague hope for the Palestinians.
Stuart, do you see any major change happening in Israeli policy as a result of this? I mean, they've got this centrist who's going to take over in 2 years. The new president is a centrist. Do you feel some kind of mollifying of attitudes?
I don't think so. I mean, it's quite clear that, you know, Palestinian people are almost apathetic in a way. The politics that's going on around, it doesn't really matter, you know, who's in charge and what policies are put forward. They haven't really had, you know, any policies put forward that have really benefited them in the slightest. So until there's a positive change there and there's something for them to be excited about, and there's not in the slightest, I've got little hope for it.
Laura, the Palestinians, as Paul pointed out, are actually claiming some of the credit for the disappearance of Netanyahu. They're saying that they're going out onto the streets, that the problems with Gaza actually contributed to destabilizing his prime ministership and seeing the end of him. I mean, do you see that as a success for protest? Do you see anything worrying about it? It's sort of, I mean, or do you think that it's just not true, that this is merely a palace coup? And Stuart's right, there's nothing for the Palestinians to see positive in it whatsoever.
Well, I think if the Palestinians can look for positives anywhere, that is beneficial at the minute. I'd like to think that not only the Palestinians, but the people across the world who've shown solidarity with the Palestinians against what, you know, the Israeli government are doing to them. You know, they're illegally occupying them. They are carrying out a genocide. I will make no bones about it. I've said this publicly many times. That is what's happening in Palestine. But I don't see this changing. And in fact, I think things might actually get worse in some ways, because I can't see this coalition being a very cooperative one. I feel like you've got somebody who's really, really right-wing and someone who's claiming to be a centrist. We've seen that before, not too long ago, and it didn't go well for the people who needed the most help. I don't expect it'll go well this time for the Palestinians. And also the Palestinians just need somebody who's willing to accept that they exist and should have a home. You know, I can't see that happening in the near future. So if it is right, John, that the protest did help in any small way, then I suggest we all just keep doing it until we get better.
I don't know that it's a genocide. I would display it, but it is a displacement. It's outrageous in that respect. Last word, Samantha. You've got precisely 0 seconds, and then we'll close down the show.
That's fine. You don't have to. I don't need to say anything. Everybody else has said what I need to say. Just everything since 2015, 2016 has been a long game of, well, things can't get worse. Oh yeah, they did. So we'll see how this can get worse.
What should we be doing, Samantha? What should we be doing in this country? What should those of us who give a damn be doing?
I tell you what does worry me is the moves to make it sort of illegal to boycott Israel. I think there's lots of moves to make it so you can't boycott Israel because that's anti-Semitic. I think we need our purchasing power is one of the only places we can make our voices heard in a capitalist society. And yes, it's not the fault of rank and file. It's not the fault of kind of normal Israeli citizens, but if you disagree with the political direction of a country, you should, and an organization should be allowed to say, I don't want to give my money to that country anymore. So that's one thing that everybody can do and support the right to do.
Thank you. And with that, we have overrun on our 50th sort of thing by a minute, but why change the habit of an entire series is what I say. Just like every other program we've done in the past year. Thank you, everybody, for listening on this really important one. Thank you to the Dream Team, who have, as always, just wowed me with the depth of their thought. Now, you know what happens here. We go away for 5 minutes. We listen to No Pasaran, and then we come back. And then we say all those things that get us pilloried on social media. So let's do that. We'd be lovely to see you back in 5 minutes for the second half. But if not, God bless you, and see you next week for the first one, the 51st episode, the first of the next year. God bless you. Bye-bye.
My name is Jack Atkinson, I'm not afraid, and I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist's a dead one, they say, and around the rear we are. When I first left all them months ago, told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. Well, for an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure. Panorama we are. There'll be no pasaran, no pasaran, no pasaran today. Fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pasaran here today. I told my mother, now mother, be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone, for I'm a real we are. There'll be no pasaran, pasaran, no pasaran today. Fascists have come for our freedom, we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pasaran here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past those first, and around here we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here, no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today.
Hello, it is us. We are here. I am here. John and Laura are not there, but I am here. And yes, I am the one-hit wonder who managed to do a speech to camera in front of Red Hills in one go. I don't know if I said anything good, but I definitely did say something and not stutter or say swear words. Like Paul said a lot of swear words.
I don't swear.
Well, you don't, because they'll have edited it out. Stephen says a good start would be stopping selling arms to people who we know are going to use them, or even stopping them at all. I mean, let's not forget, right? Was it like the XL Centre that they took over for like an arms fair, and they invited all of these people, and they were like, "This is a great thing for Britain's business," and you just like, pick a different business. This is not a good business.
It's funny that, isn't it, that they think it's good for business, but like actually what they're doing in their product is they're blowing something up. Like the product itself explodes. Now imagine if they had built instead of that some solar panels, and they could have ended up, you know, helping people and creating some sort of powers to keep people alive or improve their lives. And you know, I think maybe instead of making bombs, it'd be really fun to make things that really are useful and helpful in everyday life.
Yeah.
Controversial, I know.
I know, right? What a wild idea. What a wild idea to create things that make the world a better place. There's some co-op training coming up on like creating a co-op to take over your local high street and like fill empty shops. I'm looking forward to that. That might be my next thing. And I need a project because I'm obviously bored. Like, I obviously don't do enough. But
I'm after doing the same thing as well, Samantha, so we'll talk.
Yeah, let's do it together. Yeah, and then people can accuse us of being like totally crooked and feathering our own nests and stuff. That's the way it works, isn't it?
That's the way co-ops work, when everyone shares in the outcomes and the positive outcomes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you and I know that the trick is to actually be transparent and not just say that you're being transparent, which a lot of non-profits seem to do. Not the sort of the not great ones. Obviously, there are some great ones out there. Tim says, "Great show, happy 50th." Thanks, Tim. Thanks for coming along on the ride. Shall we all just talk about Tim for a second? Goodness me, what a guy. Does anybody want to share something about why they love Tim?
He's the most knowledgeable man on everything. He always knows if he doesn't know, he knows where to find the information at the drop of a hat. He always gets everything in the chat immediately.
His ongoing support week after week after week has been absolutely critical in maintaining our self-esteem and morale, and just him being there, to the point that really when he's not there, I begin to get nervous nowadays. You know, sort of he's the unseen member of the dream team. We can't say
he is seen. He is seen. See, all our extra members, they're all part of the show. The comments come up and people see them and interact with each other across platforms and stuff, which is all good. Which again, I'm going to say, go and subscribe to YouTube. We haven't hit 300 yet. Come on.
What a dead loss. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe now. Don't cost any money.
No.
They ask for that later. So
I love Tim is like a true feminist ally. He's always thinking about how to promote women, and he's one of the people that sort of I first noticed because he was bigging me up all the time. He was just like, "Yeah, go on, Sam," and I'm like, "Oh, thanks." Because like Laura will say, you know, imposter syndrome is baked into us. We really do need people to big us up, and you know, he's saying I'm a stalker. No, well, just that I was a bit like, God, like he's everywhere, but I really appreciate it. I do truly appreciate it. And speaking of co-ops and the co-op, he is a true cooperator. He's got sort of co-op ethics baked into him as well, and he's truly, and he's also really useful for me because as people may know, I'm trying really hard to support my local grassroots football team, despite knowing nothing at all about football. So he's really handy to bounce things off, and because I can say things to him, and I know that he's not going to think I'm stupid. He knows where I'm coming from.
Can I just add to that? Is feminist credentials. Tim was actually the fella who submitted and completed the application form for the Women's Banner Group Blue plaque for the Aycliffe Angels in Newton Aycliffe, which has now been agreed. The wording has been accepted, and we're just waiting for a date to get that erected. So, yeah, he'll be there.
I noticed that Anna's saying that she's only missed 2 episodes, 50. And
She's done better than me.
and Anne's brilliant as well, because Anne is always the person that asks the questions like, who's 50? And so,
did you see the stuff about the Hydra as well?
That sort of 3/4 of the people sort of don't know the answer to, and are wondering themselves, but actually aren't brave enough to ask. And sort of Anne just comes straight out and asks them. and absolutely invaluable, Alan. Thank you for all those questions that you asked. And there's loads of other people as well. It gets invidious. You know, sort of, I always value Mark Lumley's comments as well, which is sort of, but what would we do without Volney? And then you got Leanne, who made a brilliant one and wants us to start talking about the foreign aid debate, by the way, Samantha. And sort of, there's just so many people. And at this point, it's always lovely where we begin to talk to the people who are listening. Children Football Club.
Yeah, we've gone up a league. Woo!
There was a few comments earlier on about football, actually, interestingly, about Marxism. There's been some really funny memes kicking around because they're saying that Black Lives Matter's Marxist, and there's like pictures of Marx like singing songs about seizing the means of production in an England hat and stuff. And it's all very, very, very silly, isn't it? Where they like blaming, saying these footballers are all Marxists, and that's why they don't know what Marxism is.
Only the footballers were Marxists, eh? Oh, that'd be great.
That's what's great about Tim.
I think the competitive nature of football is somehow basically un-Marxist in its whole ethic, isn't it? Trying to beat the other people. Maybe sort of agreeing to share the goals equally between them, sure.
Well, that would be
it's my turn to score a goal
there you
now.
go, John. Surely you don't think that would be Marxism, though.
I had a lovely Marxist naturist joke today. It was the Marxist Naturist Society, and one of them turns to the other and he says, and have you read Marx? And the other guy says, no, I think it's these wicker chairs we're sitting on. This is the 50th one I've reduced it to this level. Samantha, take us back to something serious.
Should we do a show? Maybe not political or muted because we do more shorter things. But I wonder if we should do a What is Marxism show. It's been suggested by some of our members, and just they'd be like, "What is Marxism?" People are going to go, "Oh, it's just about like saying that capitalists are taking advantage of the workers, and people without capital don't have the opportunity to be capitalists, so it's quite ridiculous for someone to be a capitalist and a supporter of capital if they don't have any." And would that be a good thing? Maybe people want to respond to that.
You need it as well for fascism, Paul, because people think we're fascists. They regularly say that I'm a fascist on social media. They haven't a clue what fascism is either.
Yeah. Joe McVeigh said this the other day in our real in-person chat, didn't he? He said about fascism and about people would call Nigel Farage a fascist, but like Nigel Farage is something different. He might be a racist and what have you, but he's not a fascist. Like, he used to sing Hitler Youth songs and things according to his school reports, but he's actually quite a libertarian, isn't he? Whereas like fascism would want to use state control a lot more. He's quite against the idea of states having power.
I think there's a difference between fascism as an abuse word and the actual political creed of fascism. And people just don't have a clue.
But we have, and Mark says this in the comments, it shows the lack of political knowledge in this country. And actually, it's about, to me, it's almost about controlling people. Like, we've got this, not the, here she goes with the conspiracy theory. No, it's ridicule in society serves a purpose of weeding out rare but behaviors that we don't want our friends around us to have. So that's kind of what it serves from an anthropological point of view. So the best case scenario is for people who have damaging behaviors like racism, sexism, homophobia to be the subject of ridicule, because once we've got to that point, we know that they're substantially in the minority, that people are comfortable to ridicule them and their behaviours get beaten back. but we've got this position now where we're actually using any political ideology as a subject of ridicule, even, and sort of it's the point where it's wrong to have any political sort of like leaning.
Apart from neoliberalism, which isn't an ideology apparently anymore. That's
yeah,
the one. They're not being ideological. That's just correct, apparently, according to them.
Yeah,
I got called a Stalinist trot one day.
Oh,
I was like, you can't really be both.
Yeah.
Simultaneously erasing yourself from history and being a trot.
Yeah.
Barbara, my wife, says that this is the death of democracy. She says we don't have a democracy in Britain because nobody has a clue what they're voting for. No, very few people know anything about the politics of the people that they're voting for. And part of this is the huge waves of independents who represent everything from very extreme left-wing views right through to being former BNP members, sort of who've been attacking Muslims on social media in a previous existence, and suddenly get elected to Durham County Council as an independent. And she says it's the death of democracy. It's vital, Paul, that we educate.
Talk about BNP there.
BNP. Who is not part of the joint administration, despite the fact that he voted with them in every single vote. Can't get my head around it. Anyway, what's worrying is people are on a very surface level saying sort of what you're going to do for me, and that's fine. Like, people are allowed to ask, what are you going to do for me from their elected representatives? But, you know, they're being sort of bought off with things here and there without looking at the fact that, especially with the Conservatives, you know, this is the party that's been in control over the last 10 years while your wages have stagnated, your cost of living's gone up, you've had your bedroom tax and your rape clause and universal credit, and your life's getting progressively more difficult because of them. Don't, accept them just because they throw you some scraps off the table. You know, it's really frustrating. You know, the way that Boris Johnson has managed to totally divorce himself from the last 10 years of Conservative government. It's like, it wasn't on my watch. Well, it was your team, and you've got to have some responsibility for it. Chris says it's simple. The BNP sits in a group that isn't part of the joint administration. I know you've got your wits about you, Chris, and I know that you're going to look after yourself, but I think all of the independent councillors need to just be really careful about who they're associating with, and who they get photographed next to. You know, it's very easy for people to ascribe these really far ring. You know, I'm not gonna, like you say, John, there are a lot of independents who are not far right, and I just don't want people to associate that kind of political belief with all of the independents, because that's not fair and that's not on. But yeah, just keep away from him. Oh man. Anyway,
Jane's put a couple of really good comments in, as usual.
It's on the Restream. I'm not on the Restream. Do you want to read some out?
She said people seem to think political views are a fixed point with no common ground, and don't realise they probably have a lot of socialist values themselves, but see the word as frightening. Yeah, that's basically one of the reasons this channel exists as well, to try and detoxify the idea that we're just talking about the things that most people care about anyway.
Yeah.
I think the answer is to, I mean, I went to a meeting on climate change, and the person there, he said that what we need to do is we need to understand that most of the people in the country actually agree with biodiversity and climate action. And sort of, they just get frightened away by the wrong language. And so they say what you do is you, as soon as you start using words like extinction and rebellion, you immediately frighten off a whole load of people who actually basically agree with what you're saying. And he says, you know, don't talk about social justice, talk about fairness. And that's an awful lot of it is just the shorthand terms we use. I mean, is the answer, Paul, just in the language we use? And can we sort of make socialism socially acceptable by just talking about it as caring?
Yeah, everything always gets twisted in my view. But like, you know, I suppose like you could say that rather than saying something like, if we go back to Marxism, rather than saying something like seize the means of production, you could say, wouldn't it be nice if the workers actually controlled their own, like the product of what they do, and if they work paid rather than someone else taking a big cut. Like, you could say it like that, but seize the means of production sounds a little bit snappier, doesn't it? It sounds a little bit, and I know that's not the full story behind it, but that's basically it. But then, you know, we've got all sorts of lies going around at the moment. Like, look at Matt Hancock this week. What he said. It's proper 1984 doublespeak. He's gone on and he said that he didn't say that they threw a protective shield around care homes. And they've got him on telly literally saying it, and all of us can remember it as one of the most memorable things throughout there, because we're all up in arms about the fact that he'd said it because it wasn't true. And he's like, well, I didn't say it though. You did. You just did some things. Like, I'm all for like perception being quite important, and sometimes people perceive things differently and so on. But there are some objective facts, and one of them is that he said that. You know, but he's claiming that he didn't. And that's where we are at the moment. We've got doublespeak, we've got like people who are trying to make up anything. People who are saying that actually Marxists would come and they'd tax you. They'd tax the workers who are the poorest people. You're like, no, that's the opposite. They'd tax the rich people who are exploiting you. That's the whole point. I don't know. We're just in a very, very, very silly political situation where if you're genuine and you tell the truth, you are at an immediate disadvantage because the other people are willing to lie. And the public assumes that everyone is a liar now because people have lied from both sides of the political spectrum. Well, I don't even think there are two sides to a political spectrum, by the way. But, you know, that's it. Like, you know, Tony Blair lied about, like, weapons of mass destruction and he did all that. And then people say, well, that's the left. And it's like, that's not. That was Tony Blair. He's more probably related to Thatcher than he is to Corbyn in ideology. So, you know, there's... I don't know. I guess we just keep on trying and politically educate people and keep trying to prove that we're telling the truth by explaining things properly and standing by, like making our actions reflect what we actually say. But I don't know. A lot of the time I worry that it's completely lost, and I don't know how we get that trust back, because it doesn't seem to matter that the people who lie completely blatantly.
I agree.
Are you trying to get in, Stuart?
Not particularly, but yeah, I don't like the idea of our like pool of language being shrunk down to what's socially acceptable. I don't feel like that's something that can continue indefinitely, because we're going to start to lose really important terms. And I think a lot of it comes down to not about often what's being said, but who's saying it. And, you know, we live in an era of great salesmen. You know, from Ronald Reagan onwards, you know, part of politics was being the salesman of policy and You know, we need to get people who are having conversations about socialism, who are great salesmen and are trusted by their communities. And, you know, it's like, I maybe don't like every word they've said, but I trust them. You know, they're going to be on the right track. I think that's important.
I do want to pick up Chris Hood. My group isn't associated with him. I'm not guilty by association because I'm not associated with him. You voted with him to get rid of Labour. And there's various things here, Chris, that you need to just get your head around, that you are now in control and we're the opposition. So all those things where you rightly criticised us and held us to account, it's the boot's on the other foot now. And the issue will come, yes, I can understand that you all hung together to get rid of Labour, and that's absolutely fine. That's just democracy in action. But what happens now is how independent are the independents? And you all came here with this bullshit about being independent and you got rid of Labour and that's fine. But now you are a group of 73 of you and we'll just see whether you obey a group whip or whether you really are independents. Because if you really are independents, then there will be no homogeneity and holding together of that group. You will go and you will vote according to your independent heart. And I bet you don't. I bet you go whipped into those in exactly the same way that Labour went into it. So we'll see. Either the coalition will crumble because you really are independents, or it will hold together and continue to freeze out Labour because you were telling lies. And that's how it basically goes, Chris Hood. And we'll just see what's going to happen. And we're going to catch you out. I'll catch you out as it happens. And it's the same thing, by the way, on Great Aycliffe Town Council. We're after you. After you in the same way.
People are confused, John. People are confused. Is this about Durham County Council?
Yes, it is. And I know we said we wouldn't talk about Durham County Council, but I just got to know.
I'll just do one thing. So every independent can choose how they vote, and that's absolutely up to them. Personally, I would never have voted for a Tory, so it might have been that, like, if you voted, maybe I wouldn't have voted for a Lib Dem either. I might have voted for an indie, you know, like once upon a time or something. But anyway, because I see the Lib Dems and Tories as being very similar and what have you. But out of them, I did a little calculation because I'm an absolute nerd, as usual. And I wondered, well, what if they were voting independently? What is the chances that they all voted the same way independently? And it was over 1 in 2 billion mathematically. So obviously there is a whip there. Whether or not people say I'm part of this group, or part of this group, or part of this group, all of the people voting in the same way is so vastly unlikely that there was obviously something holding that group together for that particular vote, for every single vote, and or it's a 1 in 2 billion anomaly.
Basically, the Durham County Council independent group is an oxymoron. You cannot have a group of independents. You're either a group or you're independents. And I mean, I do understand that there was this tremendous desire to get rid of Labour off the county council. And I can understand that for those key votes about who has the positions of power, that in fact, those independents may well have independently come to the conclusion that they hated Labour so much that they were going to get rid of them and put the Tories and the Lib Dems into power. And by the way, make no bones about it, Durham County Council is now controlled from Framlegate Moor and Barnet Castle, the whole county. But I can understand that they voted for that, foolishly or not, because they so wanted to get rid of Labour, and that's their political right. But the fact of the matter is now we're going to see just how independent they are. Because when we're talking about things like, do we reopen the DLI Museum? Do we ignore the fact that we built a new HQ and stay in the old one and try and do something with the new one? When we talk about basic major problems like that. Do we develop Akeley Heads as an industry, as a business park, or do we take a large chunk of it and rebuild a county hall, a second new county hall there? When we're talking about these kind of decisions, we're talking about situations where surely Paul is right and all those independents can't agree. And then we're going to see, if they're really independent, we're going to see the fracturing of those groupings, because if they really are independents, they will not vote as a group. And you know as well as I do that, in fact, what they've done is for reasons of political power and sort of opportunity, they've all come together in a group, and they're not independents at all, because you can't have a group of independents. It's an oxymoron. And we'll just see.
And it's no secret that the Labour Party talked to everybody in the run-up to the AGM, as it should, as was right, as was its duty, as the biggest party in County Hall, to try and make a workable majority. It didn't work. Like you say, that's democracy. Anyway, like you say, we shouldn't ramble on about Durham County Council because there's people going to sleep in the galleries.
Well, you shouldn't. Wake up.
Wake up, wake up, wake up. Do you know that it's the 4th anniversary of the 2017 general election?
Oh.
That everybody's sad now, aren't they? Woke up. Now I'm sad. It's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say I came into the Labour Party because of Jeremy Corbyn, and I knew nothing about him. It was just that he was shaking things up. And I knew he was shaking things up, and I wanted things to be shook up. And then I found out that he had really solid sort of politics behind him, and loads of other people with solid politics were coming out. And I thought, this is great. I've got solid politics. I need to get behind this. Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately,
I see your "it's better to have loved and lost," and I'll raise you. It's the hope that kills you.
I don't regret it at all. It was a period when at last there was something worthwhile fighting for. And sort of that's why I'm so depressed, because Starmer is not worthwhile fighting for. And the political creed that the political vacuum that Starmer wants us to campaign and fight for is not worth fighting for. And that's the problem. And and I'll say this about Tony Blair: we had something worthwhile fighting for in those days. And his little card with the 5 things on it, and that initial new Labour government did some fantastic things, minimum wage being one of them. And sort of we look back and say, well, we've moved on from there, and we certainly have. But the fact is you've got to. The Bible says, without a vision, the people perish. And as principled people, we need something worth fighting for. We need a manifesto. I don't believe in individuals. That man wasn't what was important. It was what that man inspired in all of us to believe was possible and to want to bring about. That was why he was absolutely fantastic. And and he remains the real leader of the Labour Party, if truth be told, because anybody with any kind of oomph in their Labour heart hankers back to those days. There we are. That's all getting sung out.
And Jane says in the comments, because of Corbyn, we have people like Zara Sultana in Parliament. People need to recognise how much of a long game this is. Remember, we usually should only have elections every sort of 4 years. So that's a long time for to churn people over. It's a long time to train people and prepare people and to grow people to fill those spaces. But there's a lot of stuff that can happen in 4 years' time. I'm here, and I'm on Durham County Council now, and I wouldn't have been, full stop, if we'd gone to, I don't even know who else as a leader, but probably Andy Burnham. I'd have probably gone, yeah, he's cool, but he wouldn't have inspired me to get involved. I don't think. I'm not sure. Maybe he would. Who knows? Coulda, shoulda, woulda. But people will listen to you, John, and go, how can you call the leader of the Labour Party a political vacuum? Like the one of the campaign posters in Hartlepool was literally just a guy on a bike with a poster behind him saying there are 4 elections on May the 6th. Like, no policies. And there are so many of these adverts that have no policies. And how can you expect anybody to vote for you when you are not giving them anything to vote for? And we're not even, at this point, we're doing our best pandemic double act with the government and refusing to really lay into them because we're in a pandemic and it's a time of national crisis and all the rest of it. We're not even campaigning against the Tories. We're not even saying whatever they are, we're not that. So yeah, I mean, as a politician, as a campaigner, I'm really desperate for some policies. Yeah. I really am.
I think that's lovely. I'm talking too much, but sort of it's the 50th one. One of the lovely things is we have a little rant about Corbyn, and suddenly the comments stream lights up. Yeah, Corbyn, somebody's singing. Oh, Jeremy Corbyn. And, it just proves, Samantha, how true we are.
And I totally agree with Mark there. We look to people like Corbyn too much, and we should be doing socialism in our local community. And I've always got this anecdote when Rebecca Long Bailey lost the leadership election, and loads of people were coming to me, to my face, and saying, I'm leaving the Labour Party because I want to see strong working class women get on. It's like, well, by leaving the Labour Party, you're completely abandoning this strong working class woman. Thanks very much. We need to be out in our communities. We need to be supporting people from the grassroots, especially in County Durham and every other council that doesn't have a Labour majority at the moment. We need a lot of candidates for the next elections, and we need to spend this next 4 years empowering people, upskilling people, bringing people on with confidence, helping people speak in public. It's not easy. It is practice. It does take practice. But, you've got to start today. Well, probably not today. It's quite late. Tomorrow. You can start tomorrow. Stuart.
I just want to say, Keir Starmer isn't a political vacuum because he has politics. We just don't agree with a lot of it. But what we do have as a Labour Party is, in a time where we need policies in a manifesto, is we have a dead eye stare into a mirror and nothing else. We're blank-eyed looking at nothing. It's horrifying as a party member.
Mark Lungley, we shouldn't be a think tank, but a do tank.
I think that sounds like an away day, doesn't it? When's our first do tank gonna be?
Joe Guinan described the Democracy Collaborative as a think-do tank in our interview, and Joe Guinan was as part of the Democracy Collaborative. That's like the inspiration for the Preston model, etc. So yeah, worth a watch. Worth a watch if you go back on that one on YouTube. Search for Joe Guinan. It's a really good interview. But yeah, he's a think-do tank. I think we'll be doing some stuff. We've been doing some stuff lately. But yeah.
I went out today and did a live stream at the Extinction Rebellion event in Seaham for the XR Durham. And subsequently have burned myself.
Oh,
Yes.
Quite badly. It was very sunny and everything hurts.
What was all that
But
about?
it was worth
I
it.
realise that you're not feeling very well, Laura, but can you just tell us what was it all about?
So from what I gather, Extinction Rebellion have put on a series of events all across the coastline that are sort of gonna start at the top and meet down in Cornwall for the G7, and everyone's doing different events basically. And the one at Seaham, they had this fella dressed as King Canute, who was sat like trying to stop the seas. I think the story goes that he was trying to prove that you can't do everything, so there's no point lying about it. And just behind him there was a model. What?
You can't do everything, Laura. Can't hold back the sea, Laura.
And just behind
Laura
him there was a model. There was a model of Boris Johnson with his head in the sand. It was very cool and very funny, and but it had like a serious message to it. I did a couple of interviews with some of the people there, just about trying to get climate change recognized and something done about it, because it's not moving quick enough. So yeah, I'm gonna try and keep an eye on what's been happening and see what happens at the summit. I don't even know what day it is. It's in a few days, isn't it? But yeah, it was really interesting, really good. They did like a lot of creative stuff they put different messages in the sand and stuff. It was very cool, but it was very hot, and I'm see-through normally, so I should really have put suntan cream on, and I forgot. And it's hurting now.
Did you see that bit of news? It was about the Amazonians, the people who lived in the Amazon rainforest, and they had no discernible impact on their environment for 4,000 years. So they didn't damage their environment, like, just like all other animals don't, for 4,000 years. So it isn't a prerequisite of being human to damage everything. And I thought that was really particularly sad when you think about they're losing their way of life because other humans are coming in, getting rid of the rainforest, and they were perfectly at one with it. They might have had a different type of lifestyle to us, and maybe we didn't, maybe people wouldn't like that, but they were sustainable. The way they lived their lives was sustainable, and let's hope we can be sustainable again. I don't think we ever can be under capitalism, but yeah, maybe we need to move to something else that is sustainable. You can't be under capitalism, can you, with constant growth? The idea of constantly using more and more resources just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
I think also the idea of this afternoon and these beach things was to draw attention to the marine crisis, the crisis of climate in the seas, which are turning acidic. The coral reefs are dying. The ecosystem is massively unstabilizing, but the big danger is that sort of underneath the surface layer of the sea, which is really quite thick, but sort of nevertheless, underneath it, the sea is a massive carbon sink. And when that gets destabilized, and should that give up its carbon dioxide, then we really are in big trouble. And so there's a huge emphasis on the marine side of it and getting that right. I was really impressed. And I love, is it Mark Longley? I love these kind of creative demonstrations. And XR are really good at that. They're sort of, their funerals for extinct species, and they're all completely non-violent, and not even any shouting in many of them. They just sort of dance and fabulous. Well done to XR for those.
Shall we finish on Ruth's question there? That would be a nice way to round off the show. I'm sorry for nicking your job, but I'm trying to. Laura's not feeling very well, so I'm trying to.
All right, it's okay. Yeah, if you can only fix one issue in the world, what would it be?
Oh, Ruth, however, that's not fair. Bloody hell.
I've got an answer. I'm fine.
Oh, come on then. Of course you have. Capitalism.
I'd get rid of
Capitalism. Stop capitalism.
And that's it. And that would fix a great multitude of issues.
Well, I think you've just nicked everyone else's answers. Did
I wasn't-
anybody else have an answer that wasn't capitalism?
Yeah, my joints. Mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not if we're talking about sort of local issues, if you can't abolish capitalism, right? One of the biggest issues that has a huge knock-on effect locally is the housing crisis, and the absolute destruction of the social housing market, and passing that burden onto privately owned properties. There's so many issues related to that get create antisocial behaviour and create problem, and people who do have need for support and help do not have the need for support and help, and because of the housing benefit cap and the way the housing market works, we actually are exporting people from places that are expensive to live, like London, up to places where it's really cheap to live, like Shildon and Dean Valley and Eldon, and just literally picking people up and plonking people with no infrastructure or support, just because it's cheaper for them to live there. So there are massive problems created by the housing crisis, which is a lot more than just first-time buyers never getting around to actually being able to buy a house, Oh dear. Anybody else got anything else? No, okay, that's fine. We are going to go, folks. Thanks very much for joining us, even Chris Hood. No, I do like Chris Hood. He's a cooperator with me, and I do appreciate fair comment and fair challenge. And there's going to be a lot of challenge flying around at Durham County Council over the next 4 years, so we better get used to it, hey? Thank you all for coming and doing some great comments. There are a lot more than 7 comments. My screen says 7 comments. It's a lot more than 7 comments, but Facebook is an absolute dumpster fire of a website. And thank you, Stuart, Paul, John, and Laura for coming and hanging around. Even though Laura's about to die, as usual, she has reached the end of her ability to stay awake and alive. No Penny today. I hope Penny's fine.
She's here. She's storing next to me. She's just not jumping about.
Okay, that's fine. I know that the viewers will be worried if they don't see her, so it's good to know that she's fine.
Hang on. 2 seconds.
There we go. Penny is fine, folks. Just to repeat what Paul said before, please do subscribe on all of the channels. There is Facebook, there is Twitter, there is YouTube, there is a podcast. There's wherever you are, just wherever you are, wherever there is a search bar, type Socialist Think Tank, and if there's a follow or a subscribe button, press it. You can become a member. Being a member is free, but gets you access to fun things like a WhatsApp group where you can hear about my chickens, and but you can pay if you want to. That's socialism, folks. You don't get anything extra for paying, but you can buy merchandise, which is all ethically sourced and produced, which is a beautiful and rare thing. Okay, then we're going to say bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Keep the red flag flying, yeah.